Artificial intelligence is remaking marketing as we speak, and if you're a marketer, you can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they explore the latest AI news, trends, tools, and ideas that are creating the future of marketing today. This is No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, yes, I am an AI. Take it away, Geoff and Greg.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino, and you are listening to or watching No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. As usual, I'm here with my good buddy, Jeffrey Livingston. How are you?
Good, man. How are you? Being a little clownish. I think I have vacation coming tomorrow, so a little clowny today.
I assume you're going to Clown Town, my friend.
Well, Montreal, but yeah.
Same thing. And for those of you who are
Canadians
watching,
are going to be mad. Our Canadian listeners, do not take that.
Everybody's in Montreal this year. I swear, everybody is gone. It was like last year it was Rome or Italy. This year it's Montreal.
Montreal is awesome. But speaking of, what a great way to segue.
Absolutely.
We have somebody special with us today.
Yeah. For those of you who have been watching, you might have noticed there is a third face, and for those of you listening, no, that was not Geoff doing a funny voice. We have a special co-star on this episode. Joining us is Melinda Byerley. So Melinda has already kind of said hello, but hey, how are you? Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I hope I can get a word in edgewise, guys.
We're gonna try to let you get a couple of words in. Before you get words in, though, let me say a few words about you, and I'm going to read this more or less because I didn't memorize it. For anybody who doesn't know Melinda, she is the CEO and founding partner of Fiddlehead Marketing. They're a data-driven consultancy based in Silicon Valley, I believe San Francisco specifically. She is a veteran of the Silicon Valley world. She's led teams at companies like eBay, PayPal, and Checkpoint Software. I know somewhere hidden in your long bio, but not your short bio, and probably for reasons that many would understand, but it's very near and dear to my heart. I know, Melinda, you also spent some time at Linden Labs, the home of Second Life, and we could have an entire conversation about that, but probably not on the air. So Melinda has really been a pioneer in marketing analytics and in influencer and data privacy and ethics. In 2022, though, she refocused her career around AI for marketing analytics. Like everybody else, she has been exploring this world of artificial intelligence, and of course all of that kicked into high gear when generative AI hit the mainstream and got every marketer talking about what AI means for all of us. For those of you who want to know more about Melinda before we move along, we are going to share all of her specifics, her links, her full bio at nobrainerpodcast.com, which is the same place you go to get all of our show notes anyway, right? So you will be able to learn lots more about Melinda and find all sorts of ways to connect with her. Speaking of connecting, the reason why Melinda is with us today is she and Geoff connected in the fine city of Cleveland, Ohio last week, where both attended the MAICON conference. That's the Marketing AI conference hosted by the Marketing AI Institute. Geoff, you look like you are jonesing to say something.
I love Cleveland. I have to say it. I do. My wife's family is from Kent, and I know nobody really understands what Cleveland is until you get to Cleveland, but fantastic city, great architecture, good food, nice downtown. They've done a really good job restoring it. Really like being in Cleveland.
Awesome. Unfortunately, I was not in Cleveland. I opted to stay home. I still got COVID regardless. Didn't leave the house. Somehow managed to get COVID. And I think that's the grimy kid fingers. Not mine, my son's. But that sounded really weird and awkward, didn't it? But obviously, for anybody who missed MAICON, certainly the question comes, hey, what happened? I want to know. And that's really what today's episode is all about. Geoff and Melinda are going to kind of dish the dirt, share everything, maybe not everything, but many of the things that they heard, that they learned, what happened at the conference, give us as full a rundown as they can, for everything from the keynotes to the coffee breaks. And we're going to dive into that in just a couple of minutes. Before we do that, as always, we want to remind you, if you enjoy what we do, please be sure to subscribe, to like, to follow, to review, to rate, to rank, to share, to whatever it is you like to do on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, any place you're getting this content today. And now we're going to finally dive in. What I'd like to do is, because she's our guest and because I'm sure everyone's heard enough from me and Geoff, I'd like to kind of throw to Melinda first and really start at the top. And I'd love it if you could maybe share your overall impressions of the show for somebody who hasn't been to MAICON before. What's it all about? What's it like? What was MAICON 2023? What was the vibe?
Oh, great question. First of all, I personally happen to love small and intimate conferences. I just get overwhelmed by the big ones. And so it was, I think, somewhere around 700-ish or so people, which was amazing because I think it was 350 or whatever last year, and so they were expecting 500 or 600. It grew. So I feel like that's about the right size where you can still meet a lot of the people, you can still talk to the speakers, you can talk to the hosts, and there's still a lot of conversation to be had. You go to the big conferences and people are locked away in hotel rooms and private parties, and so it's nice. It's still at that place where there's still a lot of opportunity. I got to meet a lot of people that I have only known online, including one woman who I have known for years, probably almost a decade, that I'd never met in person, which was really fun. But after 20 years in the Valley, it was actually nice to go somewhere else to talk about technology and to meet people that were outside this bubble, however you want to describe it. So I did have to drag some people there. There were a few of my friends, certainly everybody. I'm from the Midwest, so I know a little bit. I mean, Cleveland isn't home, but it's not far away. And I happen to know what July in Cleveland can entail. And I had a hard time getting people to go with me. I tried to push the FOMO, but the ones I did drag there came out of it saying, wow, I'm really glad I went. And they've already seen some professional opportunities as a result. I would say the content was by and large for the newcomer, for the layperson. But something, 6 months ago is when I really started doing this in January of 2023, when all of my clients said, I need you to go figure this AI thing out. So it's hard to judge people when I'm only 6 months away. So I think, there's nothing wrong with people being sort of at that place in their career. We got to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
So I loved connecting. I love meeting folks like Geoff who've been at it for a long time and hearing some of the nitty gritty perspective. Well, relatively longer. So,
as Geoff likes to say, only 2 weeks longer than you.
Right. So it did surprise me that right, you're only 2 weeks ahead. It did surprise me that there weren't more people from the Valley here, and I don't know whether it was snobbishness about Cleveland, not getting it, not knowing about it, timing, summer, kids school, whatever. But I was surprised there weren't more of my fellow Valley folks there.
Geoff, I want to have you jump in just a second, but given the fact, Melinda, that, you've got the sort of Valley perspective, you're living right in that bubble where so much of this is happening from a tech development standpoint, both the big guys, OpenAI, Google, but then also this vibrant startup community, you got out of the Valley to get a bit of a different perspective. What would you say the big differences are in those perspectives? What do you not get in the Valley that you're hearing outside? And what are those of us, those of us outside, what do we don't get about what's going on in the Valley right now?
That's a great question. What happened to me, what I saw was that people were saying what I had heard in the Valley in January. So just because of the fact that I happen to live here and have lived here for so long, my network, people are invested in these companies and they've been thinking about it for a long time. So when they said, we want you to go after this, they told me basically what was about to happen in January. And it all came to play. They said, you won't believe ChatGPT 4. You won't believe, now it's going to be time for subject matter experts. This is what's going to happen. So in that sense, it's ahead, but it's not different. That said, I think, as always, I want my fellow Valley folks to get out of town. And it was, there were sessions that I thought were incredibly basic, but when I turn around and ask the person behind me what they thought, that was brand new to them. And that's the only way we're all going to sort of get in this grand and glorious future is more people have to learn. And so I think the Valley can get a little sort of high on its own fumes, and it needs to be reminded that actual real people use this stuff and are going to need to use this stuff. So there it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's about right. My perspective was similar to yours, where I was actually, I think for me it was sobering because I had an expectation that the market was here with AI, and I walked out of there like, oh my God, people are really just struggling to understand what this means, like on a very elemental level. And I mean, because I started writing about it 5-6 years ago, I forget, what it takes to really kind of wrap your hands around that. This is really a bunch of tools and apps, very similar to what we went through 15 years ago. I know all three of us were in that kind of cohort during the 2.0 era. So I think we've kind of been through this before. But, it was to the point for me where I actually came back and I rewrote my services website to make it more understandable to somebody that may understand that AI is important, but not really understand what it is in any way. I mean, any meaningful way as far as a deeper implementation goes. And the other thing I was kind of maybe a little bit surprised by was that the audience was primarily, I thought, small and medium enterprise, more towards the smaller side. And most of them were agencies, to be candid, independent agencies, like a vast majority of the businesses, agencies trying to come up to speed to figure out how to offer this to their clients, which is good on them. That was a good place for them to be. And when I did run into some of the larger companies or maybe some of the bigger agencies, there was like one or two of those, like some Canadian agency that was big. I forget the name. Please forgive me. But it was Canada's getting a hard time on this pod, isn't it? I mean, Canada's just getting savaged. We love Canada. I just want to say that.
And poutine. We love poutine.
Look, we love poutine. Je m'appelle Geoff. Anyway, that's for you in Quebec. But like all jokes aside, they were where we were at, right? They were kind of like, wow, this is really basic, I think Paul, when I meditated on it, Paul and the Marketing AI Institute, the content was right for the people that were there, right? I mean, it really kind of helped them get a grasp for it. I've seen a lot of the conversations afterwards online where people are like, oh my God, I learned so much. I'm so excited. And I feel like if the goal was to get people into this and catalyze them into engaging with AI tools, mission accomplished.
Which makes sense when you think about what the Institute does. I know they have a variety of different services, but I see them as first and most fundamentally an education organization. They have a lot of courseware. Obviously, Paul does a lot of workshops. He's got this whole conference going, so it makes a lot of sense.
Services too.
I know there are services.
I would say for me, I would say that the blurred lines were maybe complicating the conference a little bit.
Yeah,
but
sure, I could see that. But putting that aside and just thinking about their sort of core mission, I'll call it, or their original mission as an education organization, it makes sense that they would largely focus on how to expand the pie, how to bring people in, give them a baseline level of understanding, and kind of set them on their way, either to buy services, to your point, or to go out and find a way to implement outside of sort of the MAICON sphere. Geoff, as we're talking about the content being right for the people who were in the room,
right.
So obviously there were a number of different keynotes. Who really stood out for you? Who were the keynotes that you were like, wow, I'm glad I saw that person, not for star power, but for the content they delivered. And, kind of what were some of the key points that really kind of hit home for you that you think listeners should hear?
Ooh, that's tough. Well, first of all, I missed the Harvard professor guy because I was talking to Melinda. Melinda, damn you.
I still need to watch that, too. I have that video on my list. Let's have a party afterwards.
Our friend Chris Penn gave a good keynote. It was entertaining. It was very Chris Penn, a little weird at times in a good way. But, you have to – Chris can be an acquired taste for some, but I thought he did a fantastic job. And look, he brought it down to people. I kind of lost my mind at one definition of something he gave, which was very simplified. But again, in hindsight, it was exactly right to get people to embrace the technology. And that wasn't for me. It was for other people, right? And in that sense, it was very good. I was actually surprised that Cassie's from Google was it was almost condescending the way she talked to the audience because it was almost like AI's been here for 10 years. So people, it's not new. And I feel like anytime you talk down to your audience in any way like that, it's just not good, right? And I get that everybody's behind, and that came crystal clear at that conference, but I kind of felt like she could have delivered that message in a better way, maybe get us more excited about it. Let's hear what Google's doing rather than trying to be the smartest person in the room. So I wasn't a fan of her keynote. And then there was the ethicist, and I think she was pretty good. She provided some interesting analogies that got you thinking. I saw some people get wrangled up on it online, but I think that's what a good ethicist does, is it makes people get into arguments and think about what's right and what's wrong. And I thought she was good. And anytime we talk ethics and AI, I think that's an appropriate conversation. So I would say 2 out of 3 were pretty good.
Awesome. How about you, Melinda? Who did you like? What did you like? What did you take away? Any big points that you'd like to share that folks would love to hear?
I hope they love I know what I want to share. Whether they love to hear it or not, I don't control that part. But
we assume, though.
We assume, though. So I was joking. I was thinking about this. Like, one of the takeaways is AI is going to be big. Like that's but that's important. As we were talking about, there were a lot of people in the room. There were several people I just ran into I said, well, what brought you here? And they said, I was just curious. And so, hey, that's okay. Isn't it great? I love curiosity. So, but seriously, I think, what I mean by this in terms of AI is going to be big was the call that Paul made from the stage, that this is a career defining moment for senior marketers. Your choice to embrace this and to take it forward is going to define the next 20 years of your career. There's enormous opportunity here. Those who don't are going to be missing the boat. And the reason I say that I agree with this is because I agree wholeheartedly with the idea that marketing has to own this in the organization. 100%. This is a technology that's not going to come in or should not come in through IT. The marketing needs to own this. This is a huge opportunity for those of us who have been like, hey, we're important too. Or having that argument, why are you here? You just spend money, right? No, we are strategic thinkers. And the reason we need to be here is that we communicate. There's so much communication that has to go on around AI, whether it's what are our purposes and our values? How should we use it? How should we not use it? Look at today with Zoom, with the announcement about AI and the blow up online. Now,
can we please, before we go into the commentary on that, do you want to explain what that is for anybody who hasn't seen it? Because it is important.
And you can correct me. So my understanding is that, first Zoom announced at their user conference, or their big announcement, that they were going to provide AI tools inside of a Zoom call. So I presume that means something akin to Otter AI, where they're tracking, they're able to create a transcription, they're able to create to-dos, they're able to find actionable stuff inside of it. That's my understanding of it. I haven't used it yet. And of course, because the internet is what it is, somebody went through the privacy policy, and it was a very broad privacy policy. Now, I care about this a great deal. I chair the Committee for Privacy and Ethics at the Digital Analytics Association, so this type of thing is on my radar screen, and I had real problems with it. At the same time, I know people who work for Zoom who care deeply about this, and they'll tell you it's one of the more privacy-oriented companies out there. So this is an example of where the intentions are probably good. They have to have access to your voice in order to do the job, but there's a lot of things that are wrong in that privacy policy. They say, we won't sell to third parties, but there's nothing in there that says we won't make our own and open source it. There's no guarantee with what they will do with that information afterwards. So there's just, to that point, let me reel myself back in. This is why marketing has to run this, has to own it. And so it represents enormous responsibility, enormous opportunity. So that was point number 2. And then lastly, I can't believe this needs to be said out loud, but it does, is that this has to be about business value first and foremost. So it's not just, yay, let's ooh, it's new, it's cool.
Thank you. I was trying not to be mean. I'm so glad you said that. Thank you.
It has to be. I did see that said everywhere. It was said in the workshops on whatever that day was, Wednesday. it was said from the main stage, and it was said in the panels and in the workshops that the first thing you're thinking about is what is the impact on the business, and let's force rank that, and let's be smart and practical. Okay, Geoff, you've been so good. Dive in.
But was it? I mean, there were a lot of speakers that when they delivered their use cases, it was very contextual to them, and it wasn't thought through, I thought, for the audience in some cases, particularly I thought day 2 of the conference, the content was a lot better. Mm-hmm. Day 1, I was like, wow, some of this stuff is like, that's great.
And it could be, I mean, maybe I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. I tend to see the positive. I believe people are basically good. This is how you know I worked at eBay. It sort of like molded me to believe that people are basically good. But it can be hard 100%. To get people on stage to talk about this stuff. Companies right now, it's a competitive advantage, and people don't want to share exactly what they're doing, and companies won't let their people talk about it, even if they are heavily. I mean, I bet Geoff. I mean, firsthand from some of the companies I know you've worked with, they can't talk about it publicly. So this is who they could get. This is who they could get. And I sort of, so while I agree with you, I sort of have empathy for them in terms of God, it's hard to get people to go on the record.
Yeah.
More on speaker quality later.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it there.
Yeah. I actually want to dig into a couple of the things you said that one thing I fundamentally believe, I think Geoff believes too, of what you said, was that marketers need to own this. I think the three of us agree with that. I would imagine most of the people who are listening would agree with that, because unless we're totally off base, and we did put the word the phrase for marketers in our subtitle. So assuming we're attracting the right people, most of our listeners are marketers as well. But they are living in organizations where there's, of course, a lot of silos, a lot of infighting, a lot of this, a lot of that, where the argument could go, okay, marketer, but this is going to have an impact across our entire organization. It's going to affect the way we do HR and recruiting. It's going to affect business strategy long before it becomes marketing strategy. It's going to affect X, Y, and Z. It's going to, right? And you're in this silo over here, and we've got all these other things happening across the organization. We need a horizontal function like IT to come in and run this, or we need a chief AI officer, God forbid.
Can I comment? Can I jump in, please?
I got some thoughts on that too.
So, two thoughts. One, it depends on the size of the org, for sure. Giant multinational corporation, different from Series B, Series C, coming through in terms of what has to get done.
Or mom and pop.
Or mom and pop,
right.
Third.
Right. There is a lot of that there too,
Right.
So.
My first argument, even to the global multinational CEO, is this. Yes, you're right about HR, but those tools aren't here yet. The tools that are here now are marketing. We are the canary in the coal mine. It is, however it worked out, our profession is one of the first that's going to be affected. And therefore, and here's the opportunity, because we know how to communicate, we can set it up and create a plan for success so that as these tools are coming through the rest of the org, there's a blueprint for their adoption and management. You can argue with me, but that's my take. I don't disagree about the role of an AI-specific owner, because CMOs are just drowning. I mean, it's the worst job in Silicon Valley. We could talk for hours about that. It is the worst job in tech. They're drowning. They have plenty to do. So whether that person reports to marketing or whether it reports to the CEO in terms of importance, I think that's a debate worth having. But philosophically, I think you're foolish if you try to do it. They're the pilot. Marketing should be the pilot because the tools are here now.
So I think this is where
we can hang up. I'm done.
No. Like a little bit of where I felt the conference could have elevated things a little bit, right? From just the level of education. Again, let's remember the baseline of attendee. And and it's really hard throwing a conference. I used to run a 2,000 person marketing conference in DC to manage success. So I know how hard this is, particularly if you don't have a massive speaker budget. It's really hard. And I do want to say that Marketing AI Institute did a good job, and I do want to give these people props for the event that they hosted. So no disrespect intended. But from the conversation standpoint, there's a difference between value, right, business value, and hitting a business strategy, And so I feel like a lot of the conversation there was about value and, we could save you time on what you write. A lot of the prosumer kind of technology conversation that we're seeing in AI right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense. Those were the sponsors. Those were the people that were there, individual practitioners, small marketing departments, 4 or 5 people. A couple of the larger companies were B2B with very small marketing departments. Makes total sense. But that being said, if you're a CMO and you have a sizable budget, you have at least 10 people working for you, if you don't tie your AI to your business strategy,
of course,
what your strategic objectives are, right, but I didn't hear it that much there at all.
No, I'm glad you brought that out.
Tie it to your,
Agreed.
If you don't bring it to your strategic objectives, guess what? The data science team is going to implement your AI for you, and you're going to be told what to do.
Well, this assumes you have a business strategy. This assumes you have a business strategy, because what I'm seeing in the Valley is way too many startups abdicating that to the CMO.
Absolutely.
CMO's like, okay, what do you want me to do? And they're like, well, I need you to grow the company. Well, what does that mean? Is it a product? Is it a geography? Is it what the hell are we doing here? And the marketer's like, so this assumes that there is one
solution.
Right. This assumes that there is a business strategy, but that's my lens, with some of the clients I serve.
I would say maybe that's the East Coast hard-hitting business attitude, right? I think that's
right.
A very East Coast thing. Strategy. What's this? What's the ROI? Where are we hitting with our sales and marketing plan? I mean, I can't walk into a room and not hear that here. And
thank God somebody's doing it.
Yeah, but we have our own problems here, right? You don't see a lot of AI getting created in Washington, D.C., or if you do, you get shot for seeing it. I'm sorry, Mr. No CIA here. Okay. Anyway, all jokes aside, but you know what I mean? I do believe that there needs to be that hard tie back to what is the corporate strategy, assuming there is one, and then make it work to make AI fit your strategy. Make AI work to accomplish the strategy.
It's never a bolt-on. No technology solves any problem, business problem.
Right.
Well, it's classic shiny object syndrome, right?
Right. And speaking of shiny object, the other thing that jumped out when you were speaking, Melinda, was that core message that you heard, and I think fundamentally, again, we all agree with, is that AI is big and it's going to be even bigger. I'm also now thinking about kind of this shiny object syndrome that is rampant, in my opinion, among marketing teams, right? Because you put yourself at this time last year and it was the metaverse. And right before that, it was Web3. And those things have all but fallen off. They've all but fallen out of the vernacular. And yet there are still people doing metaverse initiatives, and there are still things happening in the Web3 space. But what makes this different? If I'm a marketer who's been stung by every 3-month next big thing, and then it's off.
What's your X strategy?
Right. So exactly, right?
Yeah. It's fair.
So I'd love to. I have my ideas, but kind of from your perspective, what makes this one different? What gives this staying power? Why is this not just a flash in the pan?
Well, I can't wait to hear what Geoff has to say. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to let him take it home. Well, one is I'm old enough, so I got here to the Valley in 2002 when it was will the last person out of San Francisco please turn off the lights, And I was lucky enough to be the only person off of Monster.com to get a job in 2003 at eBay. I joke, because it was bad. It was really bad. You wouldn't say
I used to work there.
Yeah, at eBay. It's funny. Oh, at Monster, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. So many black holes. But as a generation, we have lived through the rise of the personal computer. We have lived through the rise of the internet. We have lived through the rise of mobile, social. I mean, this is the next big evolution. It will be as big as the personal computer, if not bigger. How do I know that? Because I've lived here for a very long time, and people who follow me know I didn't get I worked for Linden Lab, but I never felt the world's going to do the metaverse. And when Facebook went after it, I thought this is a distraction from the guys in tight haircuts and suits that are in rooms that are papered over, right? They're trying to distract everybody from all the investigations that were going on inside. I didn't buy it. I was a Ben Bernanke of Second Life, so I understand virtual currency. Crypto, forget it. And when my mother in the Midwest is calling me and asking me if she invests in crypto, that is a Dutch tulip bulb waiting to happen. Like, forget it. No. So do I believe in blockchain? Yes. Do I believe in the power of that technology? Hell yes. But I think this is where my clients have come to me because I am the practical one. I am the one who says, and when I say something is going to be big, people trust me because I've not gotten on that bandwagon for the other sort of things. So why should you trust me? Because I've been right straight up about what's going to be big. And I see the future coming. I don't know. Anybody who says they know exactly how it's going to play out is lying. But I feel the same way about this that I felt the first time I saw an iPhone. And I would drag people into the Apple store and say, this changes everything. The way we interact with the world will never be the same. On top of that, I will add that about 15 years ago, I had the opportunity to attend a Long Now talk. For those of you who don't know who Long Now is, I think Bezos funds it, but it's basically the idea of thinking in centuries for human beings and like how do we think past like today and what's coming. And I remember the person who talked, and I've got to go pull it up because it's so rare that somebody makes a prediction and it's true. And they said in about 15 years, voice is going to get, the next big evolution is going to be voice. When voice gets, when we get the ability to control devices through voice, that's when we will see the next evolution. And voice and AI hit almost simultaneously at exactly 15 years. I'd been watching it. I'd been waiting. It, like everybody else, I think I was just stunned at the quality of ChatGPT 3.5. And it was like, oh, I thought we were on this trajectory, but no, we're here. So we better hurry and catch up. So trust me, I know is a terrible reason to say, trust me. So I look forward to Geoff's data-driven analytic response.
As do I, but
What?
To me, it's
no data.
Not about why should we trust Melinda and more, because we trust you implicitly. But it's also, what makes this one. It's really what makes this one different, right? Because were the same people who were pumping, Silicon Valley, Sand Hill Road types who were pumping money into AI today, a year ago were saying that Web3 was the future, it's going to change everything. And like you, I believe fully in blockchain and believe there are some real applications and real use cases and it can be used to solve problems. It's not there yet in terms of its application, but so much of the sort of crypto bro NFT bullshit, that's me, I guess, using a little bit of dirty language.
We got to get through Sam Altman, right? We got to get through that trial before the market's willing to move on. So long as that's still the whole Bitcoin,
it's
crypto,
not Sam Altman,
nightmare,
Sam the other guy, Sam Friedman, not Altman.
Sam this, Sam
one
that.
of
They're all the
same.
Get off my lawn, Sam.
But
there was something I thought of, Greg, and I apologize for interrupting. There's something I thought of besides trust me, which is just
don't apologize. Just
the moment I put my hands on it. I mean, when I started to use 3.5, and I started to use it, I went, "Holy shit!" Like, and since then, like I show people how I use the tool, and it blows their minds as a thought partner. As somebody, and I'm neurodiverse, so I tend to ramble. So it's something that can actually use wonderful executive function to take what I write and make it tight and crisp and clean. The power that it has is mind blowing. So it's less about like trust me and get your hands on one of these and start messing with it. You will see what I see. That this is this is amazing.
Yeah. I think just to provide some empirical side comments and support for Melinda here. I mean, the conference itself was a testimony to it. Like they had 200 the year before, and now they have like 700 or whatever that X percentage of exponential increase is. It was there. I mean, and I don't think that marketers are quick to show up to conferences today, right? It's not like it was pre-COVID.
And nobody wants to travel. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a testimony. But on top of that, just in my own experience, the reality is that, and as much as I panned Cassie, she is right in the sense that AI is not new, and other enterprises, large enterprises, are using it, have been using it, have been dominating markets with it. Hello, Amazon. And it's just something that's proven already as a quantity. It's just now becoming democratized so that the entire business world can finally access it, which is exciting.
Well stated.
And as a result of that, I cannot see this not blowing up. I'm just surprised about how slow it's moving. Actually, I'm surprised it's not moving faster.
There's a lot of personal resistance. I mean, I'm still having one-on-one conversations. The first time you see ChatGPT spit out a blog post in your area of expertise, is it perfect? No. Is it good enough? Hell yeah. Is a sobering moment. The first thing I put into it was, what problems do new CMOs have in the first 90 days? And it was like, and the color, I'm sure, drained out of my face as I went, oh God, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And yeah, what am I going to do? And every person that works in writing, I mean, I've talked to writers with long, careers that are thinking, what am I going to do? And I'm having conversations with them about what they're going to do with their expertise. This is the fun part that my friends in the Valley have taught me, is that the next phase of this is domain expertise. If you have domain expertise, you will be in demand because somebody has to teach people that what's bullshit coming out of these models.
You're giving me nightmares thinking about marketing domain-specific AI for the last 3 years at EvalueServe.
It's scary.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, the market wasn't ready for that message. Was my experience. They were like, "What?
What?" Until you put your hands on 3.5 and you see. I just tell people, ask it two questions.
4,
Who am I?
4 for me. Yeah,
right.
I love
4 too. But just get your hands on whatever version you can. You can use Llama. You can use Bing. Like whatever is accessible to you. Put in 2 questions. Who is your name? And the second one is ask it to write a blog post about your area of expertise. If nothing else, that will convince you that this is here.
Yeah.
Awesome. Absolutely.
Breakouts?
Let's talk about breakouts. So obviously a lot of the action happens off the main stage, with all the little, panels and second rooms and stuff like that. So I'd love to get a little bit into kind of what did you attend, not obviously your entire agenda, but, maybe we start with Geoff on this one is, kind of what sessions did you go to? What kinds of topics were hot topics? Were people buzzing about? Were there any key takeaways that you got out of those breakouts?
Yeah, there were a few that were really interesting. They had, I think they had a product from Shutterstock speak about generative AI from the image standpoint. I was shocked to hear that they used DALL-E, which I was like, really? You're using DALL-E? But, and everybody that's listened to the podcast knows how I feel about DALL-E. But, they are. And obviously Shutterstock's producing good stuff. So there you go, right? But their strategy overall with AI was very interesting. They went through the process of how they think about it and how they think about Shutterstock's overall image base, feeding their approach to AI, which is similar to Adobe. And it wasn't shocking to hear it, but it was still very interesting. And it was a very deep, I would call, conversation about an implementation and use case. Jim Stern's session on prompt engineering was fantastic. The panel with the Silicon Valley startups, I loved May Habib. In fact, I'm going to kind of leak a little bit, Greg. She is our guest next issue, and I thought she was actually very, very smart and brilliant. I was a little bit underwhelmed by 6 Sense on that same panel, but, it's a little bit of both, right? You get some that were different. I felt like the guy from 6 Sense was kind of like, I will not show you what I'm doing. I will not tell you at all. You will be surprised later on. And as a result of that, it kind of left a little something there. But it was still an interesting panel. And obviously now I'm following 6 Sense, so maybe he achieved his objective there. And then, the rest were okay. There weren't other ones that really sent me flying. I felt like a lot of it was more like individual influencers or people that were small businesses talking, which is perfectly in line with the audience. Again, it just didn't really compel me from an education standpoint.
Got it. How about you, Melinda?
I had a couple. I mean, I love the session on voice. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on their names, but it's a husband and wife that have been working on voice AI for a number of years, and they just were very specific and precise. And I started to think about my clients already and what were the applications of voice. I'm such an e-commerce person that voice is not my natural sort of like, oh, that's a channel and how does that work? And also the fact that they could talk about the analytics, that voice is still showing up in Google Analytics as direct traffic is an important thing when we think about what's the value of it and how do we show, clients that it's worthwhile to invest in. So I loved anybody who was a specialist in that area. I will also add that Mike Caput, he's a human Wikipedia of tools. There are so damn many tools out there right now, and as I said, tools are not a solution, but I am a tools nerd. Like my very first startup was a tool to help people select tools, so I love tools. Okay, so it's it's my kink, as they say. So, but what I love about Mike is that he's a human Wikipedia. So when his 45 tools in 45 minutes was excellent. He was just gently slide. And so I came away with half a dozen things that I hadn't heard of that I wanted to try, both for my own business or ones that I thought would help my clients. That's helpful. There are lots of tools out there, but having somebody curate it and say, these are good ones, or the privacy policy is this or that is very helpful. So I'm sure there are more, but those are two that stood out to me.
Awesome. Good. So if somebody, I guess, if the primary seat sitter attendee at the event was a relatively newbie, right? A noob, as the kids would say in AI. What do you have the sense that these breakouts were kind of practical and actionable enough? It sounds, for example, like Mike's was, right? Even you, as a more experienced user, learned about some new tools. Now, as a brand new person into the space, I might be overwhelmed, and I might be like, well, wait, 45 tools, I need 5. How do I, like the Lumascape problem? Here's 4,000 things, pick 3, good luck. So I'm just wondering, like, for a lot of this stuff that was happening in the breakout rooms, was it down and dirty and practical and people really sharing good tips for the most part? Or was there still a lot of that, as Geoff described, with the kind of, I don't know if that was a cape or a coat across your face, but that sort of spy versus
like
spy
Dracula
stuff. Of, that spy versus spy of, well, I can't tell you what I'm doing because my competitor might be listening.
Geoff, did you talk about tomorrow.io? I thought that guy did an amazing job of presenting a case study. I mean, I
didn't see him.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is one I would recommend checking out. So he got up there and he walked in, he basically gave his whole story from the time he entered the organization. How did he make the case, and how this company is enormous and has 4 marketers. He took the team, he gave people away to other departments because of how they're using AI and how they're building it into that company's culture. I think the title of it was The Future of Marketing Organizations, which is why I went, because this is what I love to think about what's the impact. It's not so much what tool we're going to use, but how many writers do we need? How many, these are the practical questions CMOs are asking. And I thought he gave a fantastic sort of, I'll call it aspirational, like this is the far end of where marketing could go right now with AI. This is how small your team really could be if everybody was in the right headspace and you set it up from the beginning. I think it's a tougher thing if you're a big company and you're dealing with big infrastructure, but because he could scale that org along with the growth of the company, he got to make a decision early on, to your point, Geoff, about it's the strategy. It's part of the strategy, and so that team can grow and be part of it. It's definitely worth watching. Do more faster with time to think was his point. Why are we doing all this? We want to do more faster, but still give ourselves time to think about what we're doing and how we're doing instead of just doing more.
So, I think for me, day 2, I thought that was really good, Greg, and I thought there was a lot of good stuff. Day 1, I kind of zeroed in on my business focus, which was generative AI implementation, and I would say that I felt that if somebody was in the exact same business as the speakers, they were probably going to get something out of it. But if not, then there would be some problems, or that worse, they may actually feel like they should do the same thing and may struggle a little bit. For example, there was one, I'm not going to mention speaker names because I just don't feel like that's right, but there was one on brand voice, which was it felt very personal brandy and how to promote yourself individually through AI tools. And granted, all three of us benefit from that kind of thing. So let's not say that it can't help us. But if I'm an enterprise, is that really going to help me? Probably not. The other thing too was there were some things about what are the best use cases, and that was very subjective and not grounded in what I would consider traditional business strategy within the sense of, if you're going to go from an MBA perspective, it was grounded in that person's particular business. So again, it's very experience based. If you have a similar experience to those persons, it would work. But I don't know if they were advertised in that manner. And so I felt like it could be hit or miss, if that makes any sense.
Okay, awesome. I think I'd like to actually go a little bit deeper around the idea of the use case. That's a hot topic for us, Geoff, and talk a bit about how prominent the idea of use cases were.
You, dude.
Then we're going to hear that bad news, but we're going to take
bad news is nobody knows what the fuck we're talking about, and we should stop using the word use case.
All right.
I'm sorry, Lisa Norell, I cursed again.
All right. And I'm sure you're going to do it again, but I'm going to ask you to take a little bit of a chill pill because we're going to break.
Nobody knows what I'm talking about.
God damn it, Geoff! I just want to break.
I love hanging out with you, Geoff, because you make me look like so cool. Like I'm the one in the room with the F-bomb, so this is great. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, now
my role in life is the spaz in the room. That's what I'm told.
All right. So take a breath. We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the second part of the show, which I think is probably 2/3 of the way through. Geoff is looking to make a heartfelt apology, so I'm going to give him an opportunity to do that, and it's not about his language. It is about something else. Go ahead, Geoff. What is it that you just remembered over the course of the break?
I do remember the Tomorrow I.O. guy, but being an old man, I was like, oh, the weather guy. I remember the weather guy. But that was actually really good. And you're right, they are doing a lot with just a small staff, a marketing staff of 4. Impressive, actually. And they've integrated AI from the very beginning. Very strong use case, one of the best talked about at the conference. I thought that one and the VMware one were both very interesting. So, yeah.
Awesome. So something else you said before we went into the break was, as it relates to use cases, I believe I'm going to paraphrase and clean it up a little bit, but I believe you said nobody knows what the F we're talking about. We need to stop talking about that, or something to that effect. Talk a little bit about what you mean there.
Yeah. So I think anybody that's been in AI a while will know immediately what a use case is. And one of the things that you and I got into, and we kind of burned the industry in general for using use cases to describe feature sets. So here's the thing. If marketers don't understand AI and they're just trying to get their fingers around it, my conclusion coming out of that conference is when I start talking use cases, I'm instantly in education mode. And anytime you're in education mode, unless you're doing that well, you're talking down to your customer. And that's, I think, everybody that's listening on this podcast, everybody that's on this podcast right now is a marketer. And we all know this, right? So if I'm talking down to you, you don't like me, probably. Or you're thinking, God damn, he's mansplaining, which I never do. But the point is like, what is really a use case? What is it? It's basically your AI strategy, right? If you think about it from a business strategy standpoint, you got your resources, you got your costs, you got your risk, you got your value, your benefits is mapped to the strategy, who are the people that are going to do it, what are the tools we're thinking about using. I mean, it basically maps out the AI strategy. So since I left the conference, I just say strategy now. Oh, your AI strategy. And then if somebody brings up use case, then I'm like, yep, that's what we're talking about. Let's dive down.
I gotcha. So you're not talking, you're not giving up on the idea of elevating the conference.
Discipline is still the discipline, yes.
Yeah, right. Because that's what I was nervous about was, kind of throw your hands up and say, okay, fine. It's so you can write a bunch of crappy blog posts and not have to justify it from the perspective of business strategy. What you're actually saying is you're just shifting your language, and the word strategy obviously is a word that people understand, whether they like it or not. They at least understand it, and that keeps you out of the muck and mire of trying to explain what a use case is.
In the words of David Ogilvy, speak in the customer's vernacular.
Of course. Good. Got it. That makes a lot of sense. You had me nervous there for a minute. Why don't we talk a little bit about, I don't know, were there exhibit halls? I know vendors were there, like, May from Writer was on the stage. Were companies exhibiting? Were you meeting early stage technology companies who were doing interesting things? Were you seeing pitches you hadn't seen or hearing about upcoming feature sets you hadn't heard about or anything like that? Maybe I'll let Melinda start with this because Geoff's going to end up dropping F-bombs anyway. So maybe...
Oh, no, we might agree. So I'm embarrassed to admit, because they are sponsors of the conference, that I didn't go to the booths. I know that they're important, and we appreciate the vendors that were there. I also, I'll give a shout out to Ellie. I was pleased to see Seva again. I've met him before. We have robust debates about the future of marketing analytics and exactly when we think AI is going to do what it needs to do. But, we respect, I respect him as a fellow analytics professional, and I enjoyed talking to him. I did not go to the booths because I just didn't go to see the technology. I live here in the Valley. It's everywhere. Like we said, tools are not the problem. People, culture, process, education, that's what I'm interested there. I didn't travel all the way to Cleveland. I could see the pitch online. I wanted to meet people like Geoff and other people that I met there and hear what they're thinking and saying, because I still feel like I'm way behind all y'all coming in just in January of this year. So, So I can't speak to that, but thank you for being there, sponsors, because, there's no conference without you.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I thought, like Melinda, I didn't really dive in. Plus, they were such a present part of the show.
Yes.
You couldn't escape them, really. So you got to hear their pitches in different ways.
Did you, were they all over the stage? Was that kind of the vibe? Was that there were a lot of pay-to-plays, perhaps?
When I mentioned in the beginning of the conference that there was a little complication, I felt between and this is one yo-yo's take on it. So throw it out with a grain of salt. But I felt that Marketing AI Institute, if they want to improve this conference, if they want to make it what I felt it could be, and may rightfully, they have it within their sights to be this, which is the premier marketing AI conference. They're going to have to figure out this dance between vendors and content and their own business model. And it's not an easy dance. The conference I mentioned that I used to run was a user conference for Vocus, which is a PR software company that got bought by Cision. But, balancing promoting Vocus and throwing a great conference usually meant keeping church and state separated and also paying for Ariana Huffington to come in and blow it up a la HubSpot. And we did that. And I can't say what's right for them. All I could say was that I could see that the lines were a little blurred and the sponsors were very present on stage. And also the sponsors were prosumer apps. And apps that you and I have seen before. I felt it was a little bit weird to see Jasper's presence and then see them lay off people the next week. That was a little bit, it's never a good look, right? It's like, hey, we're at Davos. We're going to lay off a bunch of people. But it wasn't that big of a booth. It was just a 20 by 10. Writer was there. I mean, the people you would expect that would be there. But again, people that could license an individual license to somebody as well as maybe talk to our salespeople about the potential for enterprise. Yeah. What was interesting was you didn't see Salesforce. You didn't see HubSpot. You didn't see Grammarly, for example. You didn't see. I think Lulu gave them some stuff, but Lulu wasn't there at the conference.
You didn't see Copy.ai. You didn't see. Where were they? Yep.
Yeah. So I would say that the conference has. It is a 700-person conference, not a 7,000-person conference yet. I think it has great potential to become that. But, from my standpoint, the vendors just weren't that compelling enough for me to go browsing through the trade show for.
And no slam on Cleveland, okay? But from the Valley, it is not an easy flight. It's 2 flights. It is a full day. The conference also didn't start until 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. So for those of us coming from the West Coast, we had to fly in Tuesday. It's fine, but sometimes, right? That's an extra night. It's an extra cost. Half a day was empty.
Yeah.
And I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was great. Had a great time, but see what I'm saying? That adds up depending on your schedule and what your childcare responsibilities are and so on. And no slam at all to Cleveland. And I actually respect the hell out of Paul and team for bringing that many people to Cleveland to talk about tech. It's great. But I think, you've got to find a more central location if you want to get people to Chicago or get people to, there's a reason why these places
Dallas,
or
Austin,
even
Austin for tech.
Even Detroit, because Detroit is a hub for Delta.
No,
I know. I spent a summer in Troy. It's not as bad as you think. It's not as bad as you think. Hey, if we're gonna do old school auto cities,
I had to bash somebody besides Canada. Okay.
All right. Well,
your husband just walked up the stairs.
Yeah, he did. I warned him. At least he's got a good-looking behind.
Hey, Melinda's husband, how are you? Hey.
We're house sitting. Okay, anyway, I digress. But yes, I had to, when I told people about it, they were like, great. And then I'd say Cleveland, and they went, I'm from the Midwest. I'm not a snob, but a lot of people here are.
I think Paul's basically doing the Joe Paluzzi handbook with that one with the Content Marketing Institute, which used to have their conference in Cleveland because Joe was in Cleveland, and they did that until they sold the conference to somebody. I'm assuming
Paul is in Cleveland. I know he picked up one of
the
people he picked up from CMI. So, I guess, kind of running your show in your backyard makes a lot of sense, especially up to a certain point. Obviously,
and I assume they booked it long before ChatGPT blew up. So, from a cost perspective, 100%. It made total sense.
Yeah. So I guess speaking of cost, as we all know, one of the big costs for any conference organizer is the food, right? It's like people I go to.
Awesome.
I'm constantly getting I've got conference organizers always trying to negotiate my speaking fee, and I know for a fact the coffee cups are more than my fee, and it's like, come on, guys. But anyway, what really people obviously really only care about the snacks. So how was the food, the entertainment, the social stuff, the organized stuff? How was all of that?
I want to talk about food too, just because it was so important to me this time. First of all, I have to give Kathy McPhillips a shout out for a couple of things. One is, I point my clients in Silicon Valley to MAICON Slack. She runs that Slack community so well. It's an example of how to create community and build engagement inside of Slack. She's amazing. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how her calendar works, but she's just constantly creating engagement and discussion and positive vibe there. The second is, I felt so welcomed even though I didn't know anybody. Maybe it's a bot called Kathy, but I don't think it is. I think the engagement in that community has grown because of that Slack. I truly do, because there's just constant conversation. But as you guys know, I had breast cancer last year, and I'm on a very specific diet, and I was so grateful that there were healthy options. I'm in the Midwest. I like a good steak, don't get me wrong, but there were so many healthy foods. It wasn't just all pizza. Yes, I had a homemade donut the last day. That was quite nice, but there were fruits and vegetables. There were vegetarian options. There were healthy snacks. There was water everywhere, and it was really good. Everything, it wasn't just like, oh, here's your vegetarian option. Here's some mushy pasta or whatever. It was great. I thought that the snacks were there everywhere. It was plentiful.
No rubber chicken.
No rubber chicken. The Cleveland pierogies the next day too. The last day they had a taste of Cleveland, so there were pierogies and there was sausage, and it was super.
Yeah.
Kielbasa. It was super tasty. Yeah, they nailed it.
Yeah, I'm calorie counting right now because I'm training for a marathon, and which, people that know me know that I'm usually a lot heavier than I am currently. I'm trying to lose weight so I don't blow out my knees. And I've lost 30 pounds this summer, but I actually lost 2 pounds at the conference, which was shocking to me. I almost always gain weight whenever we're on the road, just because of the heaviness of the food and the lying calorie counts on the menu. But, the food was really healthy, and I could be very mindful about what I wanted to eat, and it was delicious, which is even more shocking, right? Again, at a conference. Lots of coffee all the time. Usually that's a real pain in the butt with the conference. There was water coolers that were available everywhere. The venues that Paul had events at were also, I think, they have one. What's the river walk on Cleveland called again?
They had that first night.
The Punch Bowl.
The Punch Bowl was amazing.
The flats.
Oh, I didn't go to the flats. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You were. The Punch Bowl was on the flats.
Oh, it was on the flats,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. It was good to be there. And that was, again, top, if you're looking at logistics for an event, which is usually where everything falls apart.
Yeah.
This conference was the exact opposite. It was tied up. Everything was done really nicely. All the details were thought about. I thought the app was incredible, actually. The mobile app was really well done. Yeah, I mean, it was like, from an organizational project management standpoint, couldn't have done better. A+.
Awesome. Yeah, I it's funny, like the food always sounds like a trivial thing, and I think unfortunately a lot of conference organizers treat it like an afterthought, right? The rubber chicken, the mushy pasta, the limited coffee, the sugary snacks, right? But, one of my favorite conference organizers of all time, who unfortunately got out of the business, a guy named Len Herstein, who ran the Brand Manage Camp conference for years and years and years, which was by definition a small conference. He only did 200 to 300 people, I think, each time. But he said he always wanted to be the guy who ran the show that when his people went home, his attendees went home, they would rave about the food. They would rave about the drinks. They would rave about the parties. And it really makes such a difference at an event when you're not, to both of your examples, hunting for a carrot stick, right? In the literal sense, not the proverbial sense, that you can actually find food that you can eat, that you want to eat, that you have these good experiences that you can say, positive things about and have good memories of. I think that it's great. So the logistical stuff, to your point, Geoff, exactly that's where everything falls apart. So it's always refreshing to see a well-run event like that, which of course I didn't see. I missed it. But I'm wondering, is this an event I might go to next year? And, that kind of brings us to, I think, kind of a wrap-up. And we'll start with you, Melinda. So if you had to give it a 1 to 10, kind of would you go back? Would you recommend it to people? Who would you recommend it to? I'd love to hear your bottom line perspective.
Well, for my objectives, because I'm old school. I don't go to a conference without objectives. And I don't go to very many conferences. People will tell you I hate them. Just with the fire of 1,000 suns. And so if I'm coming out of my hole here in Silicon Valley and I'm flying all the way to Cleveland, I have high expectations. And for my objectives, they were more than met. So I'm at least an 8, give or take. And in terms of next year, I maybe, probably is the point. I want to see a few things. I want to see who's going to be speaking. I want to see who's going to be presenting. I am glad that it's in September. I think August end of July, early August is rough. People are on vacation. They want to be with their kids. So I think September is a little bit more palatable for me in terms of traveling there. So I'll be curious to see. And so I'll be watching. But I would say in general, yes, I would go again. And my final decision will just be based on, how the agenda evolves and what the plan is. Plus, I want to see Geoff again. So I think we just have to meet somewhere in the middle. So I guess
I see Geoff every 2 weeks. It's no great treat. So if it's once a year for you, that I'm sure will be more than ample. What are your thoughts? Bottom line, Geoff.
Yeah, my objective was to go and really kind of feel out where the market was, and clearly I did get that objective met based on our conversation. And I think maybe it wasn't what I expected it would be, but it was exactly what it was supposed to be. And so I'm satisfied in that sense, and I give it a thumbs up. Would I go back? That depends on whether a deal happens. For me, I would say from an education standpoint, I'm more likely to go to an AI Ford next year. Right? Because I feel like I really need that hard enterprise level knowledge and kind of kick in the teeth, and also to get access to the data science teams and the developers. But if we get a deal, I'll be back. I already scored a deal for one of my partners, but that doesn't do anything for me. I don't take a percentage, but they're happy. And obviously there were people there that were looking for technologies, and I was able to get that connect happening. But, if there's no deal, I probably won't be back because for me, the only value would be to market to people there. I may send staff if there's, and it's highly likely that there's staff on the team that need to come up to speed. I do think it would be a good conference for somebody that's just really trying to get this thing very quickly.
Awesome. So it sounds like a generally good experience all around for both of you. Maybe some quibbles, there's some areas for development, but
that Livingston guy's a kvetch.
Yeah, I mean, of course, and of course, that's going to be the case with any event. But it sounds like overall,
if it was all perfect, right? We would have nothing to say.
Exactly, we would have nothing to talk about.
I mean, I would give it a 7, right? Like, I wouldn't it's not like a 2 where I'd be like,
right,
oh my god, that was the worst thing on earth,
Yeah.
No, it was a decent conference,
Yeah, that's my point. I think probably the thing you said that kind of hit home for me was this point that it wasn't what you expected, but it was what the market needed right now. And I think in a way that's a testament to what they're doing over there, because obviously, as we all know, having lived through this many, many times, there's an advantage to being ahead of where the market is. There's an equal disadvantage from being ahead of where the market is. And I think we've all felt both the upside of that as well as the burn.
Too early is as bad as being too late.
That's why you and me are bald, right?
Absolutely. I had a full head of hair before Web 2. That's not true. I did not. But
neither did I.
Melinda, thank you so much for joining us. You made this exponentially more fun than it has been for the prior 11 episodes, so we are so happy to have you here. We hope we'll have an opportunity to, and that's me, it's not you, Geoff. I'm the one that's not fun. You're fun all the time, but I do hope that we'll have other opportunities to bring you back over the course of time, because we'd love to keep in touch, love to hear what you're up to, and most importantly, you shared a lot of great information and insights that our audience, I am sure, I would guarantee, got good value out of. So we would love to have you back at some point, and we'll talk about that offline. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit. Absolutely, thank you. And
where can they find you, Melinda?
Well, you can find me at fiddleheadhq.com, which is the name of the company. The website has to be updated. I came out of MAICON like Geoff, going, I got stuff to do. So website. I also have a podcast, if I may. I also have a podcast. It's about, and actually, I think Geoff's already agreed to come on. It's an oral history of Silicon Valley. So I love interviewing people about how, because I don't think how we got here is an accident. I think it's an evolution, and I think you got to understand what happened in order to know why we're here. And so we're going to have a lot to talk about. And this whole season's going to be
Greg's not allowed on with me.
Well, I think I want to hear Greg's story. I want to hear somebody else do some talking.
Yeah.
So yes, so those two things are going on. Oh, and if we're talking about AI, my Substack, of course, because that's where I'm learning in public. So melindabyerley.substack.com, and come and talk to me, because I really am eager to hear about how I can learn faster and be part of what's coming, because it's going to be amazing.
Awesome. And I've read some of those Substack articles. They are well worth reading, especially for people who are also looking to get up to speed, and to see somebody who is so experienced in the space being willing to take that public risk of learning out loud really reinforces, I think, in a lot of ways, why Geoff and I even started doing this podcast. This idea that we're learning out loud. Everybody is learning out loud as we go. There are no true experts in the space of marketing AI today, in the sense of practitioners, right? So it's important that even those who feel like they have never been exposed to this, they have yet to put their fingers on the keys of ChatGPT, whoever those people are not so far behind that they can't catch up, they can't learn, and they can't start to add value through the integration of AI into the way they work. Keep it up. Thank you for all that good work. We will again have all of Melinda's information, so you don't have to memorize all those URLs. But certainly, if you did. But they will in fact be at nobrainerpodcast.com, where we have our full show notes, where you can also, of course, connect with us by email if you have questions, comments, complaints, anything you would like us to cover on future episodes, and all of that good stuff, please don't hesitate to get in touch. In the meantime, thank you for listening to us across the Marketing Podcast Network. Please be sure, if you're watching us on YouTube, to subscribe, hit the like button to show your support, and wherever you are listening, whether that's Spotify or iTunes or some other weird podcast service, we're on all of them. They're not really all weird, but weird enough. Please be sure to give us ratings, reviews, because those go a long way to raising our visibility and helping others find us. If you enjoy what we do, help others enjoy it too. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Peace.